Donovan stood at the center of the delivery warehouse in Redwood Dale, his heart pounding like a distant drum as every eye in the room turned his way. He'd just pulled off his beanie, let his jacket fall open, and clipped his ID badge with the name Donovan Holder in plain sight, the same name attached to a plaque in the company's corporate headquarters. A hush spread across the space, as if the echo of forklift engines and the rustle of cardboard had gone completely still. Moments earlier, this building's general manager, Sasha, had been barking at two employees for arriving 9 minutes late from their routes. Now, she stood near a display of route tracking monitors, stunned into speechlessness. Donovan's entire body felt alive, with a precarious mix of anger and resolve. They all recognized him from internal newsletters and the occasional Zoom call, though few had met him in person. After all, he was the owner, the founder, of the entire operation that had started with one rickety van and a mountain of ambition. Yet here he was revealing himself in the most dramatic way possible. For the past 3 days, he had been passing himself off as a trainee named Nate, wearing scuffed jeans, a rival delivery service's cap pulled low, and a sturdy jacket that made him look more like a weekend warehouse helper than a CEO. He hadn't planned on ripping off the disguise so abruptly, but the moment demanded it. A few nights before, Donovan received a frantic call at headquarters from a furious retiree claiming her groceries had been abandoned on the sidewalk. The driver had refused to help carry them up a short flight of steps because, according to the official statement later, it wasn't his job. Donovan, fed up with hearing secondhand excuses, had decided it was time to see the truth for himself. He had arrived at this particular warehouse, Hub No. 7, one of 11 in his growing business, unannounced, only confiding in a district manager named Elena, who arranged for Nate the newbie to shadow the local staff. At first, he had planned to keep the charade going for a full week, observe quietly, and then compile a thorough report. But everything changed when he witnessed Brooks, a lean young driver, helping an elderly man named Horace with groceries. That single act of kindness was overshadowed by how the manager, Sasha, later berated Brooks for being off schedule. Donovan had watched this pattern repeated. Employees punished for taking extra minutes to assist elderly or disabled customers, or for reporting mechanical problems that never got resolved. Then came the moment that set the current scene into motion. Sasha marched into the dispatch floor, complaining loudly that Brooks and another driver, Marisol, had once again clocked in behind schedule, apparently ignoring the fact that they had made multiple beneficial stops, helped load heavier items for a frail customer, and ensured a safe ride for the goods. Donovan felt his blood simmer. He knew that day was no ordinary midweek hustle. This was the day he'd blow the lid off everything. And now, with his actual name tag shining under the fluorescent lights, the hush in the room thick enough to cut with a knife, Donovan Holder cleared his throat and made the first official statement of who he was. "I am Donovan," he said, in a voice that betrayed a slight tremor of emotion. "I built this company. I'm here because I needed to see, firsthand, how we treat people, our employees and our customers. And what I've discovered is unacceptable." For a heartbeat, no one dared to move. Then, a ripple of shock spread across the faces of the warehouse staff, and Sasha's complexion paled as she realized her hold on this place was about to fracture in ways she never imagined. Just 3 days ago, Donovan had stood across the street from the very same warehouse, the early morning light casting long shadows across the nearly empty parking lot. He had carefully disguised himself, as he'd done once before in another location, wearing an old jacket with a worn zipper and a well-used beanie yanked down to hide his eyes. The trick always was to appear as inconspicuous as possible, neither too assertive nor too timid, just a random fellow who could be overlooked in a busy environment. Redwood Dale might have been a small town, with only modest hustle compared to bigger cities. But the crisp autumn air carried a tension that mirrored Donovan's own. In the 7 years since Donovan started the business, then nothing more than a second-hand laptop, a stack of blank invoices, and a battered white delivery van, he'd grown the operation to 11 thriving hubs. From groceries to pharmacy goods to same-day packages, he wanted his company to be synonymous with reliable service. But along with that growth came a creeping disquiet. Customer complaints had been escalating over the last few months. Turnover among drivers was rising at an alarming pace, and more than once, Donovan had fielded teary or furious phone calls from customers who felt disrespected or flat-out ignored. He knew something deeper was wrong, some intangible rot in the system that a monthly spreadsheet or PowerPoint presentation simply couldn't reveal. So, on this crisp autumn morning, he had decided to slip behind the scenes of Hubstrift 7, known for a reputation of high efficiency on paper, but also rumored to be run by a manager who valued only numbers. Officially, he was Nate, a transfer from out of state who needed training. Unofficially, he was Donovan, the founder, the man who had an almost paternal affection for the dream he'd built from scratch. He had given the district manager, Elena, minimal details. She trusted him enough to follow along, but he still insisted on secrecy so he could gauge the warehouse's true atmosphere. Once inside, the warehouse's characteristic smell of diesel, cardboard, and stale coffee enveloped him. A short, clipped introduction to Sasha told him that she was preoccupied with route efficiency above all else. She barely looked at him, thrust a clipboard into his hands, and assigned him to ride along with Brooks, a driver rumored to be their top performer on the ground, even if his time metrics were sometimes borderline. Donovan could sense right away that the entire operation hummed under a rigid hush, as though employees scurried through tasks without feeling free to exchange more than a few polite words. That quiet oppression weighed on Donovan as he followed Brooks to one of the older vans. Brooks was a wiry young man with keen eyes that took in every detail. He tested the van's brakes, peeked under the hood to make sure everything was as it should be, and then hurried to load crates of supplies for the day's deliveries. Donovan could tell that Brooks was more conscientious than most, but he also noticed a sort of resigned tension on Brooks's face, like he wanted to voice concerns but was used to being ignored. Donovan wondered how many times a manager had brushed aside a serious problem. "You ready?" Brooks asked, snapping Donovan out of his thoughts. Donovan nodded, ready to see the truth behind the numbers in real time. For the first hour, the ride was almost monotonous. Brooks methodically checked each address, hopped out, delivered packages or groceries, hopped back in. Donovan sat quietly, careful not to ask too many questions too quickly. He was content to observe the flow, the neighborhoods they passed, the driveways, the porches. His mind churned with unspoken questions. Why is the turnover so high? Do drivers get any support or resources? Are they penalized for spending more time with customers? It was the sixth stop when everything changed, and when Donovan encountered what he would later call the hinge moment of his entire investigation. They pulled into the parking lot of a small apartment complex. Brooks hopped out, carrying a heavy crate of canned goods, paper towels, and water jugs meant for an elderly couple. Donovan was about to follow when he noticed something else out the passenger side window, an old man with a stooped frame, inching slowly across the lot with a walker. Plastic grocery bags swayed from either side of that walker's handle, and just as Donovan looked on, one of those bags split open at the bottom, sending a can rolling across the pavement. Without hesitation, Brooks placed the crate back in the van, jogged over, and picked up the can. "Here, let me help," he said softly, one hand steadying the old man's walker, while the other gathered the groceries that threatened to spill out. Caught off guard, the old man, his name, as Donovan learned later, was Horace, blinked in surprise. "Oh, you don't have to trouble yourself," Horace murmured, self-conscious. But Brooks persisted, carefully balancing the items so Horace no longer had to juggle them. What followed was a painstaking 15-minute trek across the parking lot, up a small ramp, and into Horace's apartment building. The old man moved slowly, but Brooks never rushed him. Instead, Brooks kept pace, lightly touching Horace's elbow whenever the walker threatened to scrape a curb or bump into a railing. Donovan watched the entire scene from the van, his breath caught somewhere between admiration and a gentle pang of guilt. "This is exactly what I imagined my drivers doing when I started the company," he thought. "Helping people as if delivering care, not just goods." When Brooks finally returned, a flicker of anxiety crossed his face. He was clearly aware that the clock was ticking. Nonetheless, he climbed back into the driver's seat and immediately started the engine. "Sorry," Brooks muttered. He needed help." Donovan saw the tension in Brooks's eyes, as if he expected Donovan to scold him for the extra time. Instead, Donovan forced a casual shrug and said, "No, that's good." But the moment weighed on them as they continued. When they finished the route and returned to Hubjumer 7, Sasha was waiting. The digital time log showed Brooks was 9 minutes behind schedule. She laid into him, ignoring the fact that even a single red light could have cost 5 minutes, let alone a short act of compassion. Donovan bristled, but stayed quiet, taking mental notes. Sasha didn't ask about the old man or the heavy load. She only saw a driver who had not met the rigid time standard. In that instant, Donovan realized how badly the system had devolved, a place where numbers ruled, even at the expense of basic human decency. The following morning, Donovan arrived at the warehouse before dawn, once again disguised as Nate. He was determined to gather more information before confronting Sasha or before deciding how to revamp the place entirely. As he stepped inside, the overhead lights were still off, leaving only a dim glow from a few side lamps. Empty pallets and stacked crates cast elongated shadows on the cement floor, and the hush felt oppressive, like the calm before a storm. Donovan made a beeline for the staging area, where deliveries were pre-sorted by route. He started scanning the barcodes, checking for any signs of mislabeled or neglected items. His presence went largely unnoticed. Drivers trudged in, sipping coffee or energy drinks, rummaging through route sheets without meeting one another's eyes. At first, he presumed they were simply groggy or perhaps shy around a newcomer. But as the minutes ticked by, he recognized something deeper, a sense of wariness, as if each individual feared getting flagged for some minor infraction. Brooks arrived not much later, nodding briefly at Donovan in acknowledgement. He began to check the van's tires, fluid levels, and interior shelving, all while scanning his route list for the day. Donovan noticed how methodically Brooks worked. No shortcuts, no grumbling. Yet there was no real camaraderie in the warehouse, no banter or jokes to break the tension. The conversation that did happen was mostly limited to quick logistical questions. Where are the extra straps? Who loaded that crate for Route 12? Are we short on thermal bags? Eventually, Donovan risked a small conversation with Brooks while they both walked to the van. "You always this quiet?" he asked, feigning a casual tone. Brooks just shrugged. "Talking doesn't get packages delivered," he replied. "I've learned that if I keep my head down, I avoid trouble." The remark weighed heavy on Donovan. That was not a mindset he ever wanted in his company. Once they were out on the road, Donovan probed a bit more. "So, what if you have to help someone, like that old man yesterday?" Brooks flicked his gaze toward Donovan. "It's the right thing to do, even if it slows me down. That's how I see it." Donovan asked whether management recognized such efforts, or if that might count toward good customer service metrics. Brooks merely gave a wry smile, returning his attention to the road ahead. "If there's a bonus for that, I haven't seen it," he said quietly. "But I do it anyway." They finished their deliveries faster this time, avoiding any major time losses, though Donovan spotted at least 3 moments when Brooks helped older customers carry heavier boxes to front doors or up short flights of stairs. Each time, Brooks remained unflinchingly kind and attentive. By the end of the shift, when the van rolled back into the warehouse lot, Donovan felt a strange sense of both admiration and sorrow. He admired Brooks's unwavering compassion, but felt sorrow for how unrecognized it went, and how it might even count against him in management's eyes. After his second day, Donovan no longer needed further evidence to confirm that Hub 7 was in trouble. The question was why and to what extent. He called the district manager, Elena, from his car late that evening, laying out what he'd seen. Drivers skipping breaks, mechanical problems left unresolved, hostility toward employees who took time to assist the elderly or disabled. Elena sounded concerned, but also unsurprised. She agreed to send Donovan the maintenance logs and any formal employee complaints filed in the past 6 months. Within hours, Donovan's inbox lit up with document after document. He scrolled through them in his car, engine off, the overhead light casting a pale glow on a stack of printed pages. The pattern was clear. Maintenance tickets closed without resolution. Complaints about route scheduling, overtime discrepancies. Drivers had lodged issues about unsafe van steps or missing seatbelts, only to have the issues waved away. Meanwhile, customers had reported feeling dismissed or disrespected. One particular complaint singled out a manager's comment: "If a customer can't carry their groceries, that's not our problem." Donovan stared at the page, struggling to keep his anger in check. He also discovered mention of questionable time clock practices. It seemed that some employees had repeatedly logged out automatically at 6 p.m. due to the system's default, even though their routes ended at 6:30 or later. Where did that extra half hour go? To a bonus structure that apparently never materialized. Donovan's jaw clenched. He thought about Brooks and how the driver moved through each day, overshadowed by these flawed policies. Donovan decided that enough was enough. Tomorrow he would return, but not disguised as Nate. He wanted to confront Sasha openly. He no longer cared about a slow, methodical approach. His father, an old craftsman, had once told him, "When you see a tool rusting, you don't debate whether it might get better on its own. You grab a wire brush." That's what Donovan was about to do. At dawn, he arrived in the parking lot wearing his best business casual attire, a dark blazer over a well-pressed shirt with polished shoes. Gone was the battered beanie. He pinned his official ID badge to his chest, the same badge he rarely wore because it felt too formal. Yet today he wanted no ambiguity. Donovan Holder, founder and CEO. As he strode inside, eyes widened one after another. Some people stopped dead in their tracks, scanning the ID, realizing instantly who he was. Eventually, Sasha emerged, her brow furrowing. "Can I help you?" she demanded. Her typical managerial bark softened slightly by the presence of a man in a blazer, with a name she recognized from the company memos. "Yes," Donovan replied. "You can gather your entire team right now." The firmness in his voice left no room for argument. Sasha cleared her throat, frowning, and went to call out instructions over the warehouse intercom. The employees formed an uneasy circle, scanning Donovan's expression. Brooks stood near the back, arms crossed, looking thoroughly baffled, but quietly relieved to see a sign that something big was about to shift. Standing in the middle of that circle, Donovan briefly felt the same nerves that had almost overtaken him when he pitched his original business idea to a group of skeptical investors years ago. But he steeled himself. He met the eyes of the workers, drivers in high-visibility vests, forklift operators with calloused hands, a few warehouse clerks clutching route sheets. He also saw Sasha, arms firmly crossed, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Clearing his throat, Donovan spoke loud enough for all to hear. "My name is Donovan Holder. I own this company. I started it with a single van and a secondhand laptop. I believed in the idea that delivery is about trust that customers can rely on us for the items they need, and trust that employees can rely on management for support." He paused, letting his words sink in. A hush cloaked the room. "Over the past week, I've listened to your calls, watched your daily routines, even ridden along on some deliveries. I've seen both good and bad. Good, like the dedication of drivers who go above and beyond to help an older person reach their front door safely. And bad, like vehicles with glaring maintenance issues still being put out on the road every day. And worst of all, an atmosphere where some of you feel that basic kindness is a violation of time metrics." He could feel the tension as his gaze flitted from Sasha to individual employees. A handful were nodding slightly, as if to say, "Finally, someone sees what's happening here." Others stared at their feet, uncertain or afraid. Brooks caught Donovan's eye for a split second. There was gratitude in that look. Donovan continued. "I heard about the retired couple who had groceries left on the sidewalk. I got the phone call, personally, from an upset wife whose husband had just returned from surgery. When a driver refused to help carry their groceries a few extra steps, that's not just a missed metric. That's a betrayal of the trust we claim to stand for, and I will not let that become our norm." Sasha cleared her throat. She tried to maintain a semblance of authority. "We have quotas to meet," she said flatly. "We can't spare time for every personal errand or side task. The schedule is the schedule." Donovan shot her a level stare. "Sasha, you and I will be having a private conversation in a moment. For now, I want everyone here to know. Starting today, things will change. There will be an internal audit of how this location is managed. Everything from time logs to route assignments to maintenance requests. I expect every single person to cooperate fully." The flicker in Sasha's eyes suggested she was scrambling mentally, trying to figure out how to salvage her position. Donovan turned back to the employees. "If you've had complaints ignored in the past, speak up again. If your overtime hours have been misrepresented, show me the records. If you've felt punished for doing the right thing by a customer, I want to hear that story. Because if we don't fix this, we risk losing the heart of what makes this company worth running in the first place." The next few hours were a blur of private conversations in the small side office that doubled as a break room. Donovan spoke with drivers one by one, encouraging them to share their experiences openly. Marisol, a petite woman who wore her dark hair in neat braids, revealed that she'd repeatedly worked an extra half hour or more past the official clock-out time without pay, because the digital system auto-logged her out at 6 o'clock. "It started slowly, Just a few extra minutes here and there, Marisol explained, voice quivering slightly. But then it became routine. Sasha said we'd get bonuses to make up for the discrepancy, but no one I know has seen a penny. When I asked about it, she said the numbers didn't justify a performance bonus. Donovan's jaw tightened. He jotted down the details. Then came Raphael, an older driver who walked with a slight limp. He recounted how a broken van step had caused him to slip and twist his knee last month. "I'm not one to make a fuss," Raphael confessed. "But that step is still broken. Sasha said maintenance was short-handed, so I just avoid that particular van now and hope nobody else ends up using it." "So the injury claim went nowhere?" Donovan asked. "Workers' comp said they'd look into it, but it hasn't been followed up on. Sasha acts like I should just be grateful to have a job," Raphael answered, eyes downcast. Eventually, Donovan called Brooks in. Brooks seemed uneasy in the cramped, fluorescent-lit room, as though he preferred the wide-open spaces of the road. Donovan cut to the chase. "I've seen you help folks on your route. I've also noticed that you don't speak up much about how this place is run. Why?" Brooks exhaled slowly. "Because, honestly, I didn't think it'd make a difference. I'd do these nice things for customers, help them carry things, wait to see they're all right, and then get called out for being behind schedule. Everyone around here says, just follow the clock, don't step out of line. I tried to fill out a complaint form once about the shortage of cargo straps that nearly damaged a heavy shipment. Sasha told me not to be dramatic, and after that, I just gave up." Donovan asked, "Would you want a leadership role if the culture changed? I sense you have an instinct for doing right by people, a sense of responsibility." Brooks rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe. But if that just means looking at a million spreadsheets about time metrics, I'm not sure that's me." Donovan nodded. "I'm looking for someone who cares about the drivers, who understands why we do this job in the first place. Spreadsheets are part of it, but you can learn those skills. Compassion, you can't teach as easily." Brooks said nothing, but his eyes betrayed a glimmer of cautious hope. Finally, Donovan asked Sasha to step into the break room, closing the door behind her. Immediately, she crossed her arms and leaned against the table, exuding a bristling defensiveness. "I'm sure you've heard all sorts of sob stories by now," she said, her voice thick with tension. "I hope you realize I run this hub by the book, following company metrics. We hit our quotas, always." Donovan let out a steady breath. "I'm not questioning your numbers. I'm questioning the integrity of how those numbers are achieved." He tapped the stack of notes on the table. "I have records showing that the time clock system auto-logs employees out at 6 o'clock, even when they're still working. Maintenance tickets on multiple vans have gone unanswered for weeks. Customer complaints of driver rudeness or negligence often get pinned on the drivers without a second glance at whether they're understaffed, overworked, or set up to fail." Sasha stiffened. "It's not my job to hold their hands. If people want to stop for every old man crossing the street, that's on them. But I'm not going to lie. It hits our schedule, and that's not what I was trained to prioritize." Donovan's eyes flashed. "So you're saying human decency is optional?" She blinked rapidly. "Donovan, Mr. Holder, I'm saying that we have to produce results. Our competition is fierce. The corporate metrics are always about shorter delivery times, higher volume, fewer mistakes." "In other words," Donovan replied, "you think we grow by ignoring the human element, drivers' well-being, customers' experiences, and focusing only on a spreadsheet? Because if that's what you believe, you're in the wrong company." Sasha's jaw tightened. She swallowed, maybe realizing the precariousness of her position. "We've had the highest on-time delivery rate in the region for 14 months straight." Donovan stared at her for a moment that stretched thin. "At what cost?" he asked, voice low. "Drivers skipping breaks, customers feeling brushed aside, and employees too frightened to speak up about broken steps or seatbelts. People are not cogs in a machine, Sasha. They should not have to risk their safety or skip meals for the sake of a statistic." She didn't respond, but her eyes flickered from defiance to something else, perhaps fear. Donovan slid a manila folder in front of her. "I'm placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. An internal audit team will be here tomorrow to evaluate everything. You'll be asked to cooperate. If the audit reveals negligence or policy abuse, you might be terminated. Do you understand?" Sasha's lips parted, but all she could do was nod. Donovan stood, letting her exit in rattled silence. This is just the start, he thought. Fixing one location might not be enough. But It's a start. The day after Sasha's administrative leave began, Donovan gathered the entire warehouse team once more. Gone was the tension of Sasha's looming presence, replaced by a cautious optimism among some employees and a wary uncertainty in others. Donovan addressed them with as much clarity as he could muster, pointing to new guidelines he intended to put in place. "There will be no more auto logout at 6 o'clock, he announced firmly. "Every minute worked will be logged accurately, and you will be paid for it, period. We're also instituting a new maintenance protocol. If a van isn't roadworthy, it stays parked until it's fixed or replaced. I'd rather lose a few deliveries than endanger you or the reputation of our service." He also introduced a customer care metric to stand alongside the existing efficiency metrics. "Time is still important," he conceded, "but so is the quality of service. Any driver who goes above and beyond to help a customer in need, or who solves a problem creatively, will earn points toward the same bonus pool that was previously only tied to on-time performance." Curious glances bounced around the room. A few drivers exhaled in relief. Others still seemed skeptical. Would corporate really back this new approach long-term? Or would it revert to the old ways once Donovan's attention shifted elsewhere? Finally, Donovan called Brooks to the front. Brooks, looking slightly uncomfortable, stepped forward in front of the assembled group. "Over the last few days," Donovan began, "I've seen Brooks consistently act in a way that exemplifies what I want this company to be. He helps customers without hesitation, takes care of packages with meticulous care, and performs thorough checks of the vehicles." Some in the crowd nodded. They'd seen Brooks's conscientiousness for themselves. "Effective immediately," Donovan said. "I'm placing Brooks on a regional leadership track. He'll learn the ropes of driver training and operational oversight under the guidance of our district manager, Elena. After that, we'll discuss what his permanent leadership role will be." Brooks looked stunned. His gaze slid across the room, landing briefly on Marisol and Raphael, both of whom gave him small, encouraging smiles. He cleared his throat, struggling for words. I appreciate it. Just didn't see that coming," he finally managed, his voice earnest. Donovan clapped him on the shoulder. "You earned it," he said, then turned back to the group. "I want all of you to understand. It's not just about who is in charge. It's about creating a culture where we don't punish people for being decent human beings, and we don't ignore mechanical problems until someone gets hurt." After the meeting, Donovan spent another hour fielding questions and signing off on some immediate route reassignments for the next day. He noted how the drivers' postures seemed slightly lighter. They still had a job to do, but a spark of relief lit the air, a hope that maybe this wasn't all talk. If the founder himself was stepping in to fix the system, perhaps real change could happen. 2 weeks later, Brooks found himself pacing the polished floors of the regional office, located a few miles from Redwood Dale in a low-rise building of glass and steel. It was a stark departure from the grimy concrete and diesel-scented air of Hub Number 7. Now, wearing a brand-new company jacket emblazoned with Operations Associate, Brooks felt a strange blend of nerves and pride coursing through him. The sunlight streaming through the windows illuminated a row of potted plants and a whiteboard that had various logistical notes scrawled in bright markers. Donovan had asked Brooks to arrive early for a briefing with Elena, the district manager, who'd be overseeing his orientation into leadership. Brooks fidgeted, flipping through an introductory binder on driver training protocols. He saw pie charts, schedules, bullet point lists detailing safety checks, and a proposed structure for how to integrate compassion-driven metrics alongside traditional delivery times. As someone who'd spent most of his career behind a steering wheel and loading crates, the shift to an office environment felt slightly surreal. "Never thought you'd see yourself here, huh?" came a voice behind him. He turned to see Donovan step into the office, wearing the same casual but professional attire as the day he revealed his identity at Hub Number 7. They exchanged a firm handshake. "No," Brooks admitted, letting out a nervous chuckle. "I'm grateful, but still getting used to it." Donovan gestured for him to sit, then pulled up a chair next to him. "Look, I won't pretend it's easy moving from driver to leadership. It's a different skill set. But you've got the core traits I can't teach: integrity, empathy, and a willingness to stand up for what's right." Brooks nodded, recalling how, just days ago, he was settling for quietly doing the right thing, expecting no recognition, and bracing himself for daily scoldings about schedule metrics. Now, he had a chance to make a broader impact. "So, how's Hub Number 7 doing without Sasha?" he asked, curious about the aftermath. Donovan leaned back in his chair. The audit team's still sorting through records, but from what I hear, there's already a noticeable change in morale. Drivers are no longer afraid to report mechanical issues. One of them, Tariq, found a problem with the cargo lift in van 12 and got it approved for repair within a day, something that would have taken weeks, if at all, under Sasha. Marisol says she's finally seeing her proper overtime pay. A small smile tugged at Brooks's lips. So, it wasn't just talk. It never was, Donovan replied. But this is only one hub. We've got 10 others, and I suspect each has its own mixture of strong and weak management practices. That's where you come in. You'll help shape the new driver training program. We're going to emphasize skill, safety, efficiency, and compassion all at once. No corners cut. If someone ends up late because they helped an elderly customer cross an icy walkway, that's not a sin. That's living up to our brand promise. Brooks swallowed the lump in his throat, nodding. This was exactly what he wished for all along. A company that didn't measure success solely in seconds shaved off a route, but also in trust built between driver and customer. Donovan rose, packing up his laptop. We'll meet with Elena in an hour to go over your curriculum plan. After that, you'll ride along with me for a cross-visit to hub number 4. Check out the training climate there. Word is, some of the drivers are already curious about the new direction. As they walked out together, stepping into the hallway washed with midday sunlight, Brooks felt an unaccustomed sensation of optimism. He glanced at Donovan, remembering the day he helped Horace in the parking lot, how that simple act became the catalyst for everything that followed. I didn't help that old man because I knew someone was watching, Brooks murmured. I just did it because it was right. Donovan smiled. That's exactly why you're here, Brooks, and I won't let anyone punish you for doing the right thing ever again. Their footsteps echoed down the polished corridor, carrying them into a future where kindness was more than just a footnote on a manager's daily log. It was part of the company's DNA, exactly how Donovan had always intended it to be, back when he had nothing but a single van, an old laptop, and a conviction that delivering packages could also mean delivering a little bit of humanity along the way.